Hello and welcome to Learn Yourself. Today we are going to study about is matter around us pure. So this chapter is under CBSE Standard 9 syllabus. So in this chapter we are going to study about what all kind of substances are there in our surroundings. Those substances are pure or not, and majorly we are learning about mixtures, type of mixtures, solutions, type of solution, and so many more new things. So let us start from what all substances are there in our surrounding and how can we differentiate them whether they are pure or not. So first thing is pure substance. For example, sugar, salt. Salt means we can also write sodium chloride in a chemical name. Now, what are the substances is a pure single form of a matter. Any substance we are assuming that it is pure and it is a single form of matter. When we are talking about NaCl, then it is a substance, it is a pure substance, and sodium and chloride are chemically bound with each other. So this substance is pure. We are assuming that this substance is pure. Now what is a substance? Pure single form of matter. Anything which is pure and it is a single form of matter, then we call it a substance. Now these are the substances which are pure and they are single form of matter. Now what is the meaning of single form? Means it has only one type of component. When we are talking about NaCl, then in the salt all the components, all the molecules are of sodium chloride only. That's why we can tell it that compound or that substance is a pure, because it's a single form of matter. Now when we are talking about mixtures, mixture contains more than one substances. So when we are talking about more than one substances and they are mixed with each other, even though all those substances are pure, mixtures we cannot term as pure because it is a mixture. Yes, in the mixture there are so many pure components, so many pure substances, but mixture itself are not pure. So what is a mixture? It contains more than one pure substance. So when we are talking about sand and pebble, the mixture of sand and pebble, then sand one component and pebbles are one component. They mixed with each other, so that is a mixture of sand and pebble. Now when we are talking about sugar and salt, when you are mixing these two, they both are individually pure component, pure substance, but they are mixed with each other. When they are mixed with each other, they will become mixture. Now there are two types of mixture. One is homogeneous, other one is heterogeneous. Homogeneous means the components of a mixture are evenly mixed with each other. Those kind of mixture are termed as homogeneous mixture. Now heterogeneous mixtures are like sand and pebble. You can point out that here one component is and here the second component is. That means they are not evenly mixed with each other. So that means that is a heterogeneous kind of a mixture. Now we will see a difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixture. So this is a difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixture. So when we are talking about homogeneous mixture, let us take one example that this is a water and I am adding a salt into it. So this is a mixture of salt plus water. Now very first thing that mixture is just a physically mixed component. When one component we are mixing with another component, they are not chemically bound with each other. They are just a mixture. They are physically mixed. Now when they are physically mixed, we can even separate them by physical mean. Now what are the physical methods by which we can separate them? Suppose I have added salt in a water. So if I want a salt recovered, if I want to recover a salt from water, then simply I will evaporate water and I will get the salt as a component back. So this is a physical procedure. We can do so because they are just a mixture. If we are talking about a chemically bound compound like NaCl, then we have to perform certain chemical reaction to separate sodium and chloride from each other. With any physical procedure we cannot do so because they are chemically combined with each other. This is not the case when we are talking about mixture. They are just a physically mixed, or we can say a mechanical mixture. We are mixing it manually. So with physical procedure, by physical mean, we can separate them. Now when I am adding salt into water and when I will stir it, then salt will evenly spread out through the water. Even if you will take the water, a spoon of water from top, or you will take a spoon of water from down, you will get that saltiness of water is even throughout the mixture. So that's why this is known as homogeneous mixture. Uniform composition throughout. When any two components are mixed evenly throughout and they are uniformly mixed, then it is known as homogeneous mixture. And you can also write here sugar plus water. So these two are example of homogeneous mixture. Now when we are talking about heterogeneous mixture, it's completely opposite from homogeneous mixture. When we are adding oil to water, this is a water, and when I am adding a droplets of oil into it, then oil will float over the water. Even if you will shake it, you can point it out that these are the droplets of oil. So they are not mixed with each other thoroughly. So physically apart, when the component of mixture are physically apart, they are not mixed evenly, and uniform non-uniform composition you can see throughout the mixture, then it is known as heterogeneous mixture. An example is oil plus water. You can write sand plus pebble. You can write beads and sand. Anything which we can point out the component into the mixture, then it is heterogeneous. They are physically apart and non-uniform composition throughout the mixture, then it is known as heterogeneous mixture. So these are two type of mixture. There are examples and the difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixture. Now in next topic we are going to study about solution. What is the solution? How can we make solution, and what are the type of solution? Saturated solution and unsaturated solution, and we will discuss what is the meaning of solubility of that particular solution. So here when we are talking about solution, let us understand this, that this is a glass full of water. I am adding salt to it. When salt is mixed, for example, one particular amount of salt I have dissolved in this much amount of water. One full spoon of salt I have dissolved in the water. Once that salt has completely dissolved, I am again adding another spoon of salt into the same amount of water. I am not adding water into it, I am keep on adding the salt into it. So this is one spoon of salt. After that I am adding another spoon, the second spoonful of salt. That also has been dissolved into it. Then I am adding a third full spoon of salt into that. Now when I am adding this third spoon of salt into it, when I am dissolving it, I can see that a little amount of salt is lying down, and how much ever I will stir it, this water is not dissolving that left pinch of salt. Why this has happened? Because the solubility of salt in water has reaches till its maximum level. After that point onwards, that water will not dissolve more salt into it, because the capacity of water to dissolve salt into it has reached at its maximum limit. After that, we cannot dissolve any more salt to it. When this happens, at that time we can say that this amount of water has this much amount of salt into it, and its solubility is this much gram of salt. This much gram of salt or this much amount of salt we can dissolve in the water, and that is termed as solubility of salt into a water. But we have to do this at room temperature or at specific certain temperature. If that pinch of salt, what is left behind, if I'll heat this, if I'll heat this water, and it will become warm, it will become hot, then it will extend its capacity to dissolve more salt. Once this water will be heated, once this water will be hot, again another spoon of salt I can dissolve into it, because the solvent has extended its capacity for dissolution. So whatever we are doing we are doing at room temperature, and we are checking a solubility of that particular solvent for that solute. If you will change the solvent, the solubility limit for salt will change. If you are changing the solute, the solubility will change in that particular solvent. So we are talking about this specific solute and this specific solvent at room temperature or one specific temperature. So now we are discussing saturated solution and unsaturated solution. Now what is the meaning of saturation point or saturated solution? That a solution that has dissolved as much solute as it is capable of dissolving. How much ever it has a capacity to dissolve a solute, that much solute it has dissolved in it, then it is termed as saturated solution. Whatever capacity it has, that much solute it has already dissolved in it, then that particular solution is termed as saturated solution. So capable of dissolving, whatever capacity is, that much capacity salt it has already dissolved, then that solution is termed as saturated solution. Now when can we say that it is unsaturated solution? So the solution till that point has come for the saturation limit or saturated solution. Below that limit, all the solution are termed as unsaturated solution. How? The amount of solute contained in a solution is less than the saturation level. It is termed as unsaturated solution. So that saturation limit has not yet come. So all those solution is termed as unsaturated solution. So what is the definition of that? The amount of solute contained in a solution is less than the saturation level. This is important. Is less than the saturation level, then it is called an unsaturated solution. Now when we are talking about solubility of solute in a solution, then what is the definition of solubility and how can we check that whether this solution is concentrated or diluted, or how can we check the amount of solute in a solution? Let us see that. What is the solubility? Solubility is the amount of solute present in the saturated solution at this temperature is called, at this or at particular, at particular temperature is called its solubility. Whatever amount of solute has been present in a saturated solution is a solubility of that particular solute in that solvent at particular temperature. Earlier we have discussed that what is a saturated solution. Saturated solution is a solution in which we have dissolved solute till its maximum limit of solubility. So however the amount of solute has been dissolved in saturated solution is termed as solubility of that solute in that particular solvent, but this should happen at particular temperature or room temperature. So now when we are talking about solubility, then concentration of a solution is important. Now what is the concentration of solution? It is depending upon the amount of solute present in the solution. In one of my previous video we have discussed that based on the solutes amount we can categorize solution under two categories, dilute and concentrated. When the amount of solute is less, it is termed as dilute solution. When amount of solute is more, it is termed as concentrated solution. So concentration of solution is depending upon the amount of solute present in the solution. Now we can find the concentration of solution by three ways. We can find out through the percentage that how much solute is present into the solution or what is the concentration of solution. So first thing is we can find out through mass by mass method. So this percentage we will find out from the mass of solute divided by mass of solvent and multiplying with 100, we will get percentage concentration of that solution, that this solution is this much percentage concentrated. Now this method is known as mass by mass concentration of that particular solution. When we want to find mass by volume percentage of a solution, then we need mass of solute divided by volume of solution. So this method is known as mass by volume. From that we can call a concentration of particular solution, that this concentration is mass by volume, this concentration is mass by mass. It is depending upon how are you finding it, with which two components you are finding the concentration of solution. Third type is when you are finding with volume by volume. So this is volume by volume concentration of solution, in which you are dividing volume with volume of solution and multiplying with 100. So these are three different type of concentration by which you can find out the concentration of solution with mass by mass, mass by volume and volume by volume. Solution. What is a solution? How can we make solution? What are the properties of solution? And so many more important topics. So let us first understand, when we are talking about solution, then what is a solution? When I am taking one liquid medium means when I am taking a water. As a liquid I am taking a water and I am adding a salt to it. When salt and water will mix with each other, when I will stir it, the salt will dissolve completely into a water. After that, whatever salty water or whatever mixture I will get is known as solution. Now let us see definition wise. A homogeneous mixture of two or more substances. We can also take an example of lemonade, in which there are many components or more than two components. In lemonade we are adding lemon, sugar, salt and water as a liquid medium. So that is also a mixture. Lemonade is also a mixture in which there are more substances, more than two substances. So that is also termed as solution. So homogeneous, it is very important that solution are homogeneous. That is a characteristic property of solution, that they are homogeneous. Homogeneous mixture of two or more substances is known as or is termed as solution. Now example are lemonade, air. Air is also a mixture and it is also a gaseous mixture. Now when we are talking about another exceptional case, then it is alloy. What is an alloy? Alloy is a mixture of metals. All the non-metals and metals, when we are mixing them, we will get alloy. Yes, we cannot separate them physically. Earlier in my previous video, we talked about and we have discussed that when it is a mixture, it is a physical mixture, so we should be able to separate them by physical means. But here alloy is a mixture and it is a solid solution, but we cannot separate them by physical means. It is a mixture of metal and non-metal, and one of the example of alloy is brass, in which 30% of zinc and 70% of copper is mixed. When these two metals are mixed with each other, we will get brass in this specific composition. So alloy is one exceptional case of a mixture or a solid solution or a solution that it is a mixture of metal, but yes, we cannot separate them by physical means. Now when we are talking about solution, we need to learn two important terms, that one is solvent, another one is solute. When we are talking about solvent, means we are talking about liquid mixture, liquid medium in solution. So what is a liquid medium? The component of solution. When solution is there, it is made up of two components. One is solvent and other one is solute. So one is solvent. Solvent is always a liquid medium of solution and solute is always a solid substance of solution. So here we are talking about solvent. So this is one component of solution. So component of solution that dissolves other component in it is called solvent, which will dissolve other component into it is known as solvent. Now the exactly opposite definition will be of solute, that the component, the other component we are talking about, the component of solution that dissolve in solvent is called solute. So the component which dissolves the substance in it is known as solvent, and the component which will get dissolved in the solvent is known as solute. This will be a solid substance, this will be a liquid substance, or a liquid medium and a solid substance. When these two will mixed with each other, we will get solution. So in this there are three definitions. First is what is solution, then what is solvent, and what is solute. And these are some important example of solution. These are some of the important examples of different kind of solution, that when solid and liquid will mix, one component is solid and another component is liquid. Then the example is sugar and water. These all are example of solution. So this is solid liquid solutions example, sugar plus water. The next example is solid plus liquid. In this, as a solid we are taking iodine and as a liquid we are taking alcohol. So when iodine and alcohol will mix, we will get tincture of iodine. So this is solid liquid solution. This is gas plus liquid mixture, and that is solution, that is aerated drinks like soda. So carbon dioxide is pressurized and fill it into a liquid. So that is known as aerated drink. So that is example of gas plus liquid mixture. Now when gas and gas are mixed, the example is air. There are so many gases are mixed with each other. It is a mixture of gases. So these are different types of mixture in which solid will mix with liquid, then gas will mix with liquid, then gas and gas will mix with each other. Now let us see characteristic properties of solution. So first is solution is a homogeneous mixture. So component of solution, that is solute and solvent, should be evenly and thoroughly mixed with each other. Second, particles of solution are smaller than 1 nanometer. This is important. They are very small, and so that we cannot see through naked eyes. Once we are dissolving solute into a solvent, we cannot see that here are the solute particle in the solvent. They are evenly and thoroughly mixed. That is how we are mixing salt in a water. Once the salt has been dissolved in the water, we cannot make out where the salt is. Why? Because the particle size is very small. That is, it is 1 nanometer. So we cannot see through naked eyes. Now third is they do not scatter a beam of light. Now when can any particle scatter a beam of light? To do so, the particle size should be large enough. Now here the size is very small, so that's why they cannot and they do not scatter a beam of light. So when you pass a light from a solution, a true solution, then it will not show a path of light. So it will not scatter a beam of light. Then solute particles cannot be separated through filtration. That means when you will pass a solution from a filter paper, solute will not come in the filter paper. Solute will go along with solvent or with solution. So you cannot separate, you cannot filter out solute particles through filter paper or with the process of filtration. And last one is solute particles do not settle down. Even after you will keep it for a longer period of time, you will not see that salt particle has lying down under the water or under the solvent. They will not separate. Once they are mixed, they will not separate like this. If you have added a sand in a water, then after some time it will settle down. But here when you are mixing a salt in a water and you will stir it, that homogeneous solution will not settle down, or you will not get solute particle lying down under solvent. So these are the characteristic properties of solution. Now in solution, the amount of solute is sometimes more or sometimes less. Now depending upon the amount of solute, we can categorize solution under two categories. One is dilute solution, another one is concentrated solution. So depending upon the amount of solute we have dissolved in the solution, we can tell that whether the solution is dilute or solution is concentrated. Now when the solute is less compared to solvent, then it is termed as dilute solution. When the amount of solute is less compared to solvent in a solution, then that solution is termed as dilute solution. When the amount of solute is more compared to solvent, then it is concentrated solution. When solute is less, it is dilute solution, and when solute is more, it is concentrated solution. Again, these two terms are relative. When you are adding a pinch of salt into a water, that is termed as diluted, compared to in another glass you have added a 2 pinch of solute or 2 pinch of salt in a water. So 2 pinch of salt solution is concentrated compared to the 1 pinch of salt solution. So these two are relative term, and it is depending upon the amount of solution. But generally when the salt or the solute's amount is more, it is termed as concentrated solution, and when the solute's amount is less, it is termed as dilute solution. This two term has categorized based on the amount of solute dissolved in the solvent. suspension and colloidal solution. These topics are from CBSE Standard 9 from second chapter. So earlier in my previous video we have seen what are the solutions, what are the solutes and what are the solvents. How can we make a saturated and unsaturated solution. Moving forward with our today's topic, that is suspension. Now what is a suspension? When a solute is not dissolved in a solvent, then it is form a suspension. For example, if in a water, if we are adding a dust of chalk piece, then it will remain suspended in the water. Even if you will stir it, you can see a particle with naked eye and it will remain suspended. It will not get dissolved. How the salt is getting dissolved in the water, the dust of chalk will not dissolve. And whatever particle you can see, those particles are in a suspension. So what is a suspension? That non-homogeneous system. Yes, it is non-homogeneous system. When a solute is completely dissolved in the solvent and we cannot see it, then only it is a homogeneous system. But when a solute is not dissolved in the solvent, then it is referred as non-homogeneous system or heterogeneous mixture, in which solid are dispersed in liquid, are called suspension. So for example, this is a glass of water and you can see a particles of solute are remain in suspension. They will not get dissolved. So what are the properties for this kind of solution? So first is, it is heterogeneous mixture because they are not evenly mixed. Second, suspended particles can be seen with naked eye. You can see a solute particle in the solvent. Then third, particles of suspension scatter a beam of light. Now when a beam of light will fall on a particular particle, then it will scatter that light because that is a solid substance. Yes, it is very minute in proportion, but it is a solid substance. So when a beam of light will fall on any of suspended particle, it will scatter that light. So suspension scatter a beam of light passing through it and make path visible. So whenever the light will fall on suspension liquid, then it will make its path visible. You can see that light is passing from this solution and you can see that path of light very clearly because of scattering effect. Now why they can scatter? Because they are insoluble and they are solid particle. So that's why they can scatter a beam of light, and because of that you can see the path of light through the solution. Then fourth is, particles will settle down when suspension left undisturbed. Just like when you are adding a sand in a water. When you are adding a sand in a water, you can see for some time that particles which are light will remain suspended, but heavy particles will settle down. And after some time, when you leave it undisturbed, then all the particle of sand will settle down. So it is clearly a heterogeneous system in which when you are leaving undisturbed, then it will separate solute and solvent. So it is not a true solution and it is unstable, because once you are leaving it, then they will again separate. So particles will settle down when suspension left undisturbed, and it is unstable. It is not stable because after some time they will get separated automatically without doing any effort. But when you are adding a salt in a water, after some time also it will remain dissolved in it. If you want to separate it, then you have to perform evaporation on it. Otherwise you cannot separate those two. So here this is not a true solution, it is unstable and it will get separated by its own. Then last one is, it can be separated from mixture by filtration. You can do a filtration and you can separate them very easily. So all these are characteristic properties of suspension in which these solutions are not a true solution, they are unstable. This point is very important, that they will make a path visible of light when light will fall on suspension liquid. You can see the particles and it is obviously a heterogeneous mixture. Our next topic is colloidal solution. So colloidal solutions are also heterogeneous mixture. The particles of colloidal solution scatter a beam of light and show Tyndall effect. Earlier we have seen in suspension that they will also scatter a beam of light, but the Tyndall effect can be seen from colloidal solution only. Now what is a colloidal solution? That in solution these are the particles of solute. Now these particles are very minute and very small compared to suspension. If we are comparing the colloids with suspension, then particles of suspension are big enough. Here particles are big. We can see it through naked eye, but they are very minute. If we are adding a milk, some drop of milk in a water and the solution will form, is known as colloidal solution. We can see the particles of solute in the solvent, but we cannot separate it through filtration and they are very minute. Then this kind of solutions are known as colloidal solution. Since they are not mixed evenly, it is heterogeneous mixture and the particles are big enough to scatter a beam of light. That's why it is scattering a beam of light. It will make a path of light visible and it will also show a Tyndall effect. But the suspended particles cannot show Tyndall effect. That is a basic difference between suspension and colloidal. Now for example, dust and smoke in the air. Sometimes we can see that from the clouds, the rays of lights are coming and they are scattering. That is also known as Tyndall effect. When in a thick forest you can see rays of light are coming down, that is also a Tyndall effect. And another example is milk and water. When you are mixing some of milk drops into a water, then the solution is known as colloidal solution. Then size of particles are too small, but yes, you can see it through naked eyes. They do not settle down. This is a difference in between suspension and colloidal solution. In suspension, they will settle down once you will leave it undisturbed. Here, even though you will left it undisturbed, they will not settle down and remain suspended evenly in the solvent. Next is, can be separated from solvent through centrifugation. Now centrifugation is a technique to separate solute from solvent, in which we are rotating a solvent and solute mixture, that is our colloidal solution, in a test tube, and we will put that centrifugal machine and we will rotate it at a high speed. After some rotation, it will separate solute and solvent, but we cannot separate it through filtration. Then how can we term this kind of solute and this kind of solvents? So what all solutes will be there? That solute is known as dispersed phase. They are remain in dispersed phase, and solvents are termed as dispersing medium. So in dispersing medium, the dispersed phase will be our solute, and this too will make a colloidal solution. They can be solid, liquid or gas. So this point is very important, that this will not always a solution, this will not be always a liquid. They can be solid, they can be liquid, and they can be gas. It is depending upon which dispersing medium you have choose and which dispersed phase you have choose. So let us see some of the examples. So this point will get clear that how can a colloidal solution be solid, liquid or gas. And this from 1 to 7 are the characteristic properties of colloidal solution. We will also see the basic difference between suspension and colloidal solution, and we will also see what are the similarities between suspension and colloidal solution. Now these are some of the examples of colloidal solution in which our dispersed phase and dispersing medium are different. Dispersed phase means our solute and dispersing medium means a solvent. So when liquid will mix with gas, the type of colloidal solution will be aerosol. Here every time whenever the state of dispersed phase and dispersing medium will change, the type of colloidal solution will change. This is a type of colloidal solution, that is aerosol, foam, gel and sol. It is depending upon which kind of phase and which kind of medium you are mixing. So when liquid is mixed with gas, we will get aerosol type of colloidal solution, and the example is fog. So when liquid, for example for fog, water is mixed with gas. So in atmospheric gas, when it is mixed a liquid, a minute particle of water will mix with it, then the fog will generated, and the type of this colloidal solution is aerosol. Next is gas will mix with liquid, then when dispersed phase is gas and dispersing medium is liquid, then it is foam. If you will change this, liquid will become phase and gas will become dispersing medium, then the type of colloidal solution will change. So it is depending upon which solute is getting dissolved in which solvent or is mixing with which solvent. So when gas and liquid will mix, we will get a foam type colloidal solution, and the example is shaving cream. Next is when dispersed phase is liquid and dispersing medium is solid, then we will get a gel type colloidal solution, and example is jelly. Now when our dispersed phase is solid, means solute is solid and dispersing medium is liquid, then we will get salt type colloidal solution, and example is mud. Here also we can take a milk of magnesia or any cough syrup. You can see a suspension or colloidal suspension in a liquid medium, that is a type salt of colloidal solution. So these are some of the basic example of colloidal solution. Now we will see that how suspension and colloidal solution are different from each other, and at the same time they do share some of the similarities. Now let us see that how the colloidal and suspension solution are different from each other and what all are the similarities between them. So first we will see the difference between them, that colloidal solutions, it will show Tyndall effect, whereas suspension solution will not show any kind of Tyndall effect. Second point is it will not settle down. While left undisturbed, the colloidal solution will not settle down, whereas a suspension solution will settle down. Third point is it can be separated through centrifugation. This is a name of a technique that through centrifugation we can separate colloidal solution. And here through filtration we can separate a suspension solution. If you want to write here example, then a chalk dust in a water will be example of suspension solution, and here the drops of milk in a water will be the example of colloidal solution. Now the similarities between them are, first, particles can be seen through naked eyes. Both solute particles are big enough that we can see through naked eyes, but if we will make a comparison between them, then colloidal particles are comparatively smaller than the suspension medium. Second is both are heterogeneous mixture. Both are not a true solution. Both are heterogeneous mixture. And third is they both will scatter a beam of light so that we can see a path of light very clearly. It will be visible, but the Tyndall effect can be seen through colloidal solution and not through the suspension solution. This is a basic difference between colloidal and suspension solutions. Separating components from the mixture. These topics are from CBSE Standard 9 syllabus from second chapter. So here I have noted down all the techniques which we are going to study in this category to separate these mixtures. So we will get an overview that what all techniques we are going to study and what it will separate. So first, evaporation technique we are going to study, and it will separate solid plus liquid mixture. So from this we will separate solid. So example is salt plus water. Second technique is centrifugation. The example is cream and milk. The same under same category we are going to study the centrifugation. The third is separating funnel, in which liquid mixture we are going to separate. Sublimation, that is solid mixture we are going to separate through sublimation. Then technique is chromatography, which we are using to separate colors of the ink. Then distillation and fractional distillation we are using to separate two liquid mixture. In this, distillation is for miscible liquids and fractional distillation is for the liquids whose boiling points are near. Eighth is separating components of the air. How can we separate the components of the air? We know that there are so many gases present into the air. So that is gaseous mixture is present in the air. So basically we are going to separate nitrogen, oxygen, argon and carbon dioxide gas from this mixture. And then last is purification technique for the water. So let us start study all the techniques. These techniques are very easy once you will understand the concept behind the technique, and you will understand that why we are using this technique and the condition related to that, then it will be really easy to understand. So under mixture of solid plus liquid, so the mixtures having two types of components. In that, one is solid and another one is liquid. So our mixture is solid plus liquid. That means we have in the mixture one component solid and one component liquid. So under this category of mixture, we have to study two different techniques. First is evaporation. We know that what is evaporation. Here I have taken example of salt plus water. I have dissolved some salt, that is NaCl, in the water. Now I want to separate these two. So I will utilize this evaporation technique. We can also perform this on the boiling water. The beaker full of water, we will heat it. Once that water will boil, we will put a petri dish on that and we will take the heat from the boiling water to evaporate the solution. Here we are utilizing a sand bath. This is known as sand bath. In this, a big vessel, sand is there, and on top of that sand I have put a petri dish. In the petri dish I have put my solution that consists of salt and water. So once this sand will be thawed, it will pass the heat to this petri dish, this solution, and this solution will evaporate. So water will evaporate and at the last we will get our salt. So salt will be lying behind at the end of the heating. So this is how we are separating salt and water. But through evaporation, when we are separating solute and solvent, we are losing solvent at the end. At the end, we will not get our solvent back because we are using this technique to separate solute and to recover solute. We will not get solvent at the last. We will only get our solute at the last. So, when our solvent is volatile means it will evaporate with the help of heat. When our solvent is volatile and solute is non-volatile, that means with the help of heat it will not evaporate. So, and this condition we will use evaporation technique. And for which mixture we are using? For solid liquid mixture. And remember that when we are performing this technique, we are going to lose our solvent at the end. We will not recover it back. So this is how we are doing this. Now, under this category, solid liquid mixture, the another technique is centrifugation. In this, at the last, we will get both the components back. That is our solute and our solvent. Here I am taking example of cream and milk. How we are at home also, how we are separating cream from the milk. We are churning it very fast. So at the end of that churning, those fast rotation, the cream will be separated from the milk and it will be floating on top of the milk. The same thing we are applying here. This is how our centrifugal machine will look like. So in laboratory, this machine we are using to separate solute and solvent. Some of the solutions are like which we cannot separate through filtration. Those solute components we have already studied colloids. These colloids are impossible to separate through filter paper because they are very minute, the jelly like particles. So it will pass through filter paper and we cannot separate through filter paper. So to separate colloids from the solvent, we are using this technique. In this test tube, we will take a solution and we will rotate it at a very high speed. So at the end of our rotation, we will get a colloids separated from the solvents. So it will be lying down at the test tube bottom. So you can, after that you can perform the sedimentation technique and you can take out the solvent from the top. So this is how we are separating cream from the milk and some colloids from the solvent. Now these are some of the important application of centrifugation technique, or you can also say the centrifugal force. So in diagnostic laboratories, when in laboratories there are samples for urines and bloods will be there, then those samples will get tested through this technique, that is centrifugation technique. In dairy and at home we are using this centrifugal force and this churning, and at home we are using blenders to separate cream from the milk. And at the third application, this centrifugal force we are using in washing machine to squeeze out water from the clothes, and we will get a dry clothes at the end of this centrifugation. So these are some important application of centrifugation, and this kind of centrifugal machine we will see at laboratories, and at household and at home also we are performing the same technique to separate cream from the milk. So this both technique we are utilizing to separate the mixture of solid plus liquid. This solids we cannot separate through filtration. Then when a solvent is volatile and solute is non-volatile, we will perform evaporation. But here we are going to lose our solvent at the end of procedure. In the next category, we are taking liquid plus liquid mixture. So in this we are going to study three different techniques. So our mixture is liquid plus liquid. So when two liquids are mixed, there are two possibilities. Either they are miscible liquids or they are immiscible liquids. First we will see that when the liquids are immiscible. What is the meaning of immiscible liquids? Means they cannot mix evenly, they cannot mix properly. So for example, we are taking oil plus water. We all know that oil is lighter than water. When we are adding oil in the water and we will left it undisturbed, it will automatically separate and it will float on the water. So we are utilizing this kind of separating funnel. This is a funnel in which there is a cork at the bottom. So when we are adding the mixture of oil plus water and we will leave it for some time, the oil and water will get separated. The same way how we are seeing the layers like this. Like this we can see the layers of oil and water. So once they will get separated completely, we will open this cork and we will allow the water to come out from this. And once we can see that all the water has come out, we will close the tap. So what will happen that what all water will be there or what all liquid will be there which is heavier, and at the bottom it will come out and we will collect it in the beaker, and rest will be lying in the separating funnel. In this we can also separate 2 or 3 liquids which are immiscible. If you are adding glycerin, water, kerosene all together, then their densities are different. So they will make a separate layers according to their density. So one by one you can take out the layers, what are liquids at down, you can take out those liquids and you can separate accordingly. So this is one technique which we are using to separate immiscible liquids. Now when liquids are miscible, we are utilizing 2 different techniques. When they are miscible liquids, that means they are evenly mixed with each other. For example, acetone and water, they are evenly mixed. Then in that case we cannot use separating funnel. Now under this category, when liquids are miscible, then we have to check that whether those liquids boiling point difference is above 25 Kelvin or below 25 Kelvin. Because if it is below 25 Kelvin, then we have to perform fractional distillation. Below 25 Kelvin means their boiling points range is very nearby. One is 80, another is 85, another one is 90. In that case we cannot perform distillation, because at the same time when it will achieve 82 degree centigrade temperature or 82 Kelvin temperature, the both liquids simultaneously will start boiling and we will not get any liquid in a pure form. So when a difference is above 25 Kelvin, we are using distillation technique. And when the boiling point difference is below 25 Kelvin, then we are using fractional distillation. So this is a basic difference between distillation and fractional distillation. Let us first understand distillation. That in distillation we will take one round bottom flask. In this we have taken a mixture of acetone and water. So once we will start boiling this liquid, acetone is having a lower BP compared to water. So acetone will achieve boiling point much faster than water. So it will start boiling, the vapor of acetone will go through this distillation tube, and here we are passing a water. This is an inlet of water and this is outlet of water. So this condensation tube will be cooled completely through this circulation of water. So all the vapor which will condense through this tube will come till here, and the acetone will come out from this in a dropwise manner. So here we are collecting the acetone. So here we will get acetone at the end of the process. And in this a round bottom flask, the water will be lying behind. So this way in which there are two liquid mix which is and whose boiling points are more than 25 Kelvin, we can separate them through distillation technique. One will be lying in the round bottom flask and other one will get distilled and will come out here through this distillation tube. Now fractional distillation. In this the assembly will remain same, only we are attaching this fractional distillation column. This is known as fractional column, and in this there are beads of glass. So what will happen, what all vapor will go, those vapor will get cooled down on the surface of those glass ball, and repeated vaporization of this liquid will allow this liquid to separate according to their boiling point difference. So when the boiling point difference is lesser than 25 Kelvin, we are performing this fractional distillation. So in this we are attaching this fractional column which is having glass bead. So from this, whenever the liquid will get evaporate, it will go to this, it will get cooled down when it is come in a contact with glass bead, and this repetitive cooling will allow turn by turn all the liquids to come out according to their boiling point difference. This process we are utilizing when we are separating petroleum products. So in petroleum products there are large majority of the products which are having boiling point difference lesser than 25 Kelvin. So in those situation we are using fractional distillation. So these are three different techniques which we are utilizing to separate liquid mixture. Separating funnel for immiscible liquids, and for miscible liquids whose boiling point difference is more than 25 Kelvin, we are using distillation, and whose boiling point difference is lesser than 25 Kelvin, we are utilizing fractional distillation. Third category of mixtures is solid-solid mixture. So under solid-solid mixture we are going to study one technique, that is sublimation. In sublimation we are taking a mixture of two solid from which one substance should be sublimable substance. So here we have taken a mixture of ammonium chloride and salt. At the place of ammonium chloride we can also use any other sublimable substance. Now what is the meaning of sublimable substance? Which substance will sublime with heating is known as sublimable substance. Now what is sublimation? When any solid substance by heating will directly convert it to gaseous state is known as sublimable substance, and that process is known as sublimation. Again, a solid substance by heating will directly converting into gaseous substance is known as sublimable substance, and this process is known as sublimation. So we know a sublimable substance like ammonium chloride, camphor, anthracene and many more. So when this kind of sublimable substance will mixed with salt or any other non-sublimable substance, then we can perform this technique to separate them. So in this I have taken one petri dish, and in the petri dish I have inverted one funnel such that the vapor will not go out, and in the petri dish I have taken the mixture of ammonium chloride and salt, a fine powder like material of sodium chloride and ammonium chloride. So I have taken this mixture in petri dish, and top of that I have inverted a funnel. Now once I will start heating, the ammonium chloride and the substance which is sublimable substance will start converting into gaseous phase. So the vapor of the substance will go towards the funnel. Now funnel's inside surface is cool surface. So when it will touch to the surface of the funnel, it will deposit it over here. So first it will sublime heating, and then once it will get the cool surface of the funnel, it will get deposited over here. So first the sublimation will happen, and once the NH4Cl will get the cool surface of funnel, it will again converted back to solid substance, and that process is known as deposition. And we can say that ammonium chloride will get deposited inside the surface of the funnel. So here two processes will happen. First is sublimation. In this, the solid substance will converting into gaseous state. Then after that the deposition will happen, and in this again the gaseous substance will go back to its solid state when it will cool down. This is by the action of heat, and this is by once it will get cooled down. So first sublimation and then deposition. So after this process, inside the funnel surface we will get the sublimable substance, and in the petri dish the salt will be lying behind. So this is how we can separate two different component, one which is sublimable and one which is non-sublimable. Now in sublimation technique, the condition is one substance has to be sublimable substance, then only it will get evaporated and deposited back to the funnel. Otherwise, if both substances are non-sublimable, then we cannot separate through this technique. Till now, what all techniques we have learned, all those techniques were used to separate only two components, solid, 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 liquid, and so on. Here, this technique, which is known as chromatography, we use to separate when many solid components got dissolved in only one solvent. So when many solid substance, that means many solute will dissolve in only one solvent. So this is a mixture of many solute and one solvent. So from one solvent, how to recover all the solutes back? So at that time we use the chromatography technique. Now chromatography is an ancient technique. People were using this technique to separate the color. So chroma in Greek means color. So earlier they were using this technique to separate the color, to color in from the dye. So this technique earlier were used in color separation from the dye. In this, on the filter paper, you can perform this at home also. This is very easy technique. On the filter paper, we are putting a drop of ink. You can use a sketch pen and put one dot of black sketch pen at the bottom of the filter paper. Now this filter paper we have to hang in a water, and this is a beaker in which there is a little water, and we have to hang as such that only a lower surface of the filter paper will touch the water. It should not dip into the water. So when it will touch to the water, the slowly water will get absorbed in the filter paper, and slowly it will move towards the upper corner of the filter paper. Along with that, this dye will get dissolved in the water, and slowly you can see the colors from the black ink, green, blue, pink, all the colors will get separated as and when the travel time will finish. So like this we can separate all the colors from the black color ink. So the process of separation of many solutes dissolved in the same solvent is known as chromatography. This is a definition of the chromatography technique. Chroma means color, and first in earlier ancient time this technique were used to separate the colors from the dye. Now what are the application to separate colors in dye? Then pigments from natural colors. Colors which are naturally available, like some pigments which we can use from hibiscus flower or from turmeric, those colorful pigments we can separate through chromatography. Drugs from the blood. If blood sample is there, and then we have to check that what all drug or what all medicine has been used to treat a disease, then we can check from the blood sample of that patient. So these three are the application of chromatography, and this technique is used to separate all the solutes which are dissolved in the solvent. So this is a different technique. Earlier all the technique we have used to separate only two components. Here many solute and one solvent is there. Physical change and chemical change. These topics are under CBSE Standard 9 from second chapter. So here, first of all, let us understand that what is the meaning of physical change and what is the meaning of chemical change. First of all, we will see physical change. This is a definition of physical change in which it says that change occur without change in composition. Composition means whatever substance is undergoing a change. The composition of substance should not change, and no change in chemical nature of the substance. So these two conditions are very important, that composition should not change and the chemical nature of the substance should not change. So when can we say that this is a physical change? That examples of physical change are change of state. Now what is the meaning of change of state? Earlier we have studied that interconversion of state. For example, solid will convert into liquid and liquid will convert into gas. When this change will happen, the composition of substance will not change and its chemical nature or the properties of substance will not change. It will remain same. For example, if ice is converting into water and water will convert into steam under this interconversion of state, then the composition of water will remain same throughout this change, that is H2O. Its chemical properties will not affected by this change. So this change is termed as a physical change. So what is a physical change? In which a composition will not change and a chemical nature of the substance should not change. Then that change is termed as physical change. We can also say that tearing of paper, breaking of glass, all this change comes under physical change, because we are changing only its shape. Its physical nature will change, but it will not affect its chemical composition and its characteristic properties. Now, what is the chemical change? Chemical change is a change where the chemical composition of substance will change and its chemical property will also change. That means any chemical reaction can be termed as chemical change when two or more substances will come together and form another substance or a new substance. That is termed as chemical reaction and that is chemical change. So what are the chemical change? Any burning can be termed as chemical change. Suppose for example, when you are burning a paper, it is converting into ash, that is carbon. So paper's chemical composition has been completely changed from paper to carbon or cellulose to carbon. So that burning is termed as chemical change. And any chemical reaction can be termed as chemical change. So when you are identifying a change, that whether this is a chemical change or physical change, you have to keep in your mind two things. After the change, the chemical composition is changed. If yes, then it is a chemical change. If not, then it is a physical change. And its characteristic properties should remain same if it is a physical change. And if it is changing, then it is a chemical change. Our next topic is element, compound and mixture. So in this we will have a brief idea about what are the elements, what are the compound and what are the mixture. In standard 10 we are going to study all these things in detail. So here first we will discuss element. What is an element? Element is a basic form of matter. So for any matter, element is the basic form and from which a substance will start building. So element is a basic form of matter that cannot be broken down into simpler substance by chemical reaction. So element is a very minute form of any matter. Once you will perform a chemical reaction and you will decompose a substance until you can reach element, but further you cannot decompose that substance. For example, we have H2O. So if you will decompose this into a simpler substance, you will bifurcate this into a simpler substance, then you will get two hydrogen atom and one oxygen atom. So once you will get one oxygen atom, this element, once you will get, further decomposition or further breakdown is not possible once you will reach at the element level. Further you cannot break it through any chemical reaction. So this is an element. Here also this is a hydrogen element, but here there are two atoms. So again you can make it into one. So element is a basic form of matter that cannot be broken down into simpler substances by chemical reaction, because this is a very basic form of substance and this is a simplest form of substance. Further simplification cannot be possible. Now under element we have three major bifurcation. First is metal, second is metalloid, and third is non-metal. We all know metal and non-metal. Now what are the metalloids? Metalloids are the elements which are in between metal and non-metal. They are possessing properties from both metal and non-metal. So they are in between metal and non-metal. Here we are discussing metal and non-metals property in detail. So what are the metals? For example, we know metal like sodium, potassium, iron, and so many more metals. So they have luster, they conduct heat and electricity, they are very good conductors of heat and electricity. They are ductile, they are malleable, and they are sonorous. So now when we are studying about non-metals, whatever the properties of metal, it's exactly opposite for non-metal. That they do not have luster, they do not have shine, they are poor or they are almost bad conductor of heat and electricity. They cannot pass heat and they cannot pass electricity. They are non-ductile, non-malleable, and non-sonorous. You can also write metals are hard, whereas non-metals are soft, liquid, and gaseous substance. Non-metals you can write carbon, sulfur. So these are non-metals. And these are the properties of metals. Now moving towards our next topic, that is compound. What is a compound and how can we form a compound? So now we will discuss about what are the compounds. Compound is a substance composed of two or more elements chemically combined with one another in fixed ratio or proportion. That means that when one or two element comes together, for example, we will take sodium chloride, Na and Cl. This is a sodium and this is a chloride. When these two will comes together, they will chemically combine and they will form NaCl. So this is a common salt, that is sodium chloride. Now when these two elements will chemically combine, they will leave behind their original properties and they will form a new molecule which has a completely new set of property. For example, when we will talk about hydrogen. So hydrogen will react with oxygen and it will give us H2O. When we are discussing about water, hydrogen is a gas, oxygen is a gas. Both are gases, but when they are mixed together, when they are chemically combined, they will give us a liquid, and that is a water. So hydrogen and oxygen's both chemical property is different compared to water's chemical property. Oxygen is essential for burning, whereas water you can use to extinguish burning. So their properties are completely different. And why this has happened? Because they have undergone a chemical reaction. Earlier we have discussed in chemical change that what all substances are undergoing a chemical change. And the substance what we will get after a chemical change, it has a completely new set of property. It has nothing to do with their earlier elements. If you will see the sodium, then sodium, when it comes in a contact with water, then sodium will start burning. So this sodium will attach with chlorine and it will give us sodium chloride, which is very well dissolved. You can dissolve sodium chloride in a water and it is edible also. So the elements, when they are undergoing a chemical reaction and they are giving a chemical compound, that compound has a completely different set of property compared to their element. So, and two or more element will combine chemically and in the fixed ratio. This is important because when we are discussing about water, then it is important that two atoms of hydrogen is connecting with one oxygen. If you will change this and you will write like H2O2, then this is not a water. HO2, then this is not a water. Only two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen will make a water molecule. These two are not a water molecule. So it is very important that their ratio or their proportion should be fixed. Here also one atom of sodium and chloride are connected with each other with a chemical reaction, chemical bond, and they will give us sodium chloride. So it is fixed. Whenever any chemical compound will be there, then their molecular formula is fixed. Then only that specific particular compound will form. Now mixtures and compounds. How the mixtures are different from compound. So what are the mixtures? Element or compound just mix together to form a mixture and no new compound will form. For example, if we will say that a mixture of iron and sulfur. These two elements I have mixed, iron and sulfur. I have just physically mixed these two, a powder of iron and a powder of sulfur I have mixed. So that is a mixture. What are the compounds? Element react to form a new compound. They have undergone a chemical reaction and they have formed a new compound. So this is a definition of mixture, that they are just physically mixed and there is no new substance after this mixing. Now variable composition. Throughout the mixture, the composition will be variable. If for a compound we will take NaCl. In one petri dish we are taking a mixture of iron and sulfur, and in another petri dish we are taking a salt. So when you are seeing a petri dish of salt, then throughout the composition of salt will remain same. Everywhere there will be a molecule of sodium chloride, and each and every molecule of sodium chloride will possess a property of that sodium chloride only. Whereas here the composition will be varied. That means it is mixture of iron and sulfur. So somewhere you can see iron, somewhere you can see sulfur. As the components will increase, you can see a many variety of composition in the mixture. But that same thing you cannot expect in compound, because in compound the compound will show only one type of characteristic property. All the constituent means what all substances you have mixed in the mixture. All the constituents show their own property. Now, in mixture of iron and sulfur, if you will rotate a magnet on top of this petri dish, the iron will attract it towards magnet and it will separate out. That means sulfur has not affected iron. Iron has retained its own property. And this you can separate through a physical method, that is magnetization. You can separate, and all the mixture, whatever constituent or what all substance you have put in the mixture, they will retain their property because they have not undergone any chemical change. And here it is a fixed composition. Mixtures do not have any fixed composition. You can put as much as you want of any amount of any substance. Whereas here you cannot do so because in compound the proportion is fixed. So it is fixed composition. All molecules show same property. So throughout the compound, all the molecules will show a same characteristic properties. Here you can separate this mixture through physical method. Any mixture can separate through a physical method because they are physically mixed. They have not undergone any chemical change. Whereas here chemical reaction is a must to separate them. Whenever they are combined with a chemical bond, you have to perform chemical reaction if you want to separate them, if you want to decompose that compound. So this is a basic difference between mixture and compound. Basically you have to remember that compound is a chemical compound. It has gone under a chemical change. So their set of properties is fixed, their proportion is fixed. It will show a specific characteristic properties throughout the molecules. Whereas mixture is just a physical mix. All the constituent or all the components will retain their own property and we can separate them by physical method. So these two things are very different from each other. So this is all about a second chapter, and I have given the link of all the videos of second chapter in the description. If you have any doubt regarding any topic, please do write to me at my email address or you can comment in a comment box. Don't forget to subscribe Learn Yourself because in coming videos we are going to solve some important question and exercise. I'll see you in next video. Till then, keep learning, keep sharing.